All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into a case that's really going to make you think.
Yeah.
Back to 1958, Indianapolis, the unsolved murder of Malvina Crutz.
Oh, yeah, this one. This one's a real doozy. Like stepping back in time, you know? All those vintage details, but still so much we don't know.
Exactly. And we've got a whole pile of stuff to sift through. Newspaper articles, a crime podcast episode, even some court documents. We're going to lay it all out, see what we can make of it. Maybe even spot something the investigators missed back then.
It's like we're armchair detectives, but with the benefit of hindsight, right?
Okay, so 1958, January, it's cold.
Yeah.
Charles, Malvina's husband, he gets home from work, finds their son, Buddy, just 10 years old, watching TV. Seems normal, right?
Yeah, totally. Until
Charles finds Malvina in the bathtub, dead.
And that's where things get weird.
Oh, yeah. So she's in the tub, but her pants are wet, and they're in Buddy's room. How'd they get there?
And then there's this yellow pencil found at the scene. Got hairs on it, probably a woman's, but nobody can figure out whose. Plus, rugs from Buddy's room are under Malvina's body in the tub.
So many questions already. But hold on. Before we go jumping to conclusions, we need a timeline, a solid one.
Yeah.
Every minute matters here.
Absolutely. Got to get the sequence of events straight.
Okay, so January 29th, Buddy's home for lunch around noon. He talks to his mom through the bathroom door. Doesn't see her, but knows she's in there.
Okay.
And this is backed up by the milkman. He gets there about 12:10, sees Malvina's car in the garage, and talks to Buddy, who's taking his mom's milk order through that bathroom door.
So we know for sure Malvina's alive in the bathroom at least until 12:10.
Now here's where things get interesting. Around 12:45, two of Malvina's friends call the house, and they hear a man's voice on the other end. So someone else was there with Malvina and Buddy. They even hear Malvina in the background, but she doesn't come to the phone. Instead, she just kind of says to her friends, tell them not to pick me up today. Like she doesn't want them coming over.
Right.
But why?
Right. What's going on?
Exactly. So the friends, they decide to go over anyway. Around 1:45, they get there and see a man driving Malvina's car away from the house. So now the window for this whole thing is between when Buddy left for school and the friends arriving, less than an hour.
That's a tight time frame, man. Makes every detail even more important.
Okay, so let's talk suspects. Of course, the husband, Charles, he's looked at right away. Especially when investigators find some holes in his alibi.
Yeah, he said he was at work, but he took this super long lunch, like 3 hours. Not usual for him.
And he said he had lunch, got a shoe shine, visited a friend who lived in this rooming house, but it's all kind of vague. And remember, this is 1958. Investigators relied a lot on this thing called a polygraph, a lie detector test.
Yeah, the polygraph. Cutting edge back then, but we know better now, right?
Right. Passing a polygraph doesn't mean you're innocent, and failing doesn't automatically make you guilty. It's just one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly, just one piece.
And with Charles, there's another big piece. 2 weeks before Malvina's death, she filed for divorce, cited marital misconduct, even worried about Buddy's safety.
Oh, wow. So there's motive. Gets more complicated now.
And get this, the court date for their divorce hearing, scheduled for the day after she was murdered. Talk about a coincidence.
That's some timing. Makes you wonder.
Okay, so we've got Charles, the husband, shaky alibi, possible motive. But then there's those workmen. They'd been at the house, doing renovations after a fire they had a month earlier.
Right. Police cleared them all at first, based on those polygraph tests we were talking about. But then 2 names pop up again. Robert Smith, he was a paper hanger, and Leroy Pennock, a painter.
Witnesses saw Robert with Malvina in her car just days before the murder, but he denied it.
And here's the kicker. The police said they had absolute evidence against him, but never said what it was.
So what was it? Was it really absolute?
Yeah.
We were left wondering.
They played their cards close to the chest on that one.
Now, Robert, he did pass his polygraph, except for the question about being in the car with Malvina. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
Right, exactly. Then there's Leroy Pennock. His story's a whole other thing. He admitted to assaulting a woman same day Malvina was killed and failed multiple polygraphs.
And he got really emotional when they questioned him about Malvina and the crime scene.
And get this. Later on, Leroy, he gets convicted of murdering his partner and the way it happened. Some really creepy similarities to Malvina's death.
Whoa. No way that's just a coincidence.
It's definitely not suggestive, but without hard proof linking him to Malvina, it's just a really unsettling possibility.
Okay, so we've got Charles the husband, Robert and Leroy the workman, both with their own suspicious stuff going on. Who else could there be?
Well, there's one more person who pops up. And it's a wild card, this one. James David Rogers. He's already in jail for other crimes, and out of nowhere, he confesses to killing Malvina.
Wait, so another suspect, but he's already locked up. This just keeps getting wilder.
It does, doesn't it? So, Rogers claims he met Malvina at a cafe, went home with her, and then accidentally killed her during an argument. He even described wiping down the steering wheel of her car to get rid of fingerprints.
Sounds like he's trying to make it believable. But did it check out?
Not really. He got some key facts mixed up, like what time he left the house, which faucet he used in the tub, things like that.
So messing up details, his story's not adding up.
Right. And as the police dug in, it unraveled even more. He took back his confession and started blaming other people.
Like he was just trying to get attention or a better deal, maybe.
Could be. False confessions, they do happen, though it's rare. And Rogers, with his story changing all the time, no solid details, it made the investigators doubt him big time.
Okay, so we've got all these possible suspects, their stories all jumbled up. What else can we use to figure this out?
Well, there's one more thing, and this is where things get really interesting. 2 letters. Mysterious ones. After a reward is offered for info about Malvina's case, these letters get sent to the local newspaper. Might be from the same person claiming to have inside knowledge.
Hold up. Anonymous letters. Sounds like something right out of a movie. What do they say?
This is the good part. The writer, they give specifics about the case, like describing the guy seen leaving in Malvina's car, and it matches up with Leroy Pennick. They even mention that maybe the car keys, which were never found, were tossed away somewhere.
So someone out there saying they know something, and it points toward Leroy. But how much can we trust anonymous letters?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? They have details that seem too specific to be made up, but without knowing who wrote them or why, it's tough to say how reliable they are.
It's like having this puzzle piece that might fit, but you can't be sure until you try it.
Exactly. Tantalizing possibility, but also a challenge. Could be huge, could be a dead end.
Man, this case just keeps getting more and more twisted. Conflicting alibis, shady characters, these mystery letters, and so many questions still hanging out there. What really happened in that house during that hour? How did Malvina's pants end up in her son's room?
And what about that absolute evidence the police were so sure Robert Smith had? Was it real or just a bluff?
We've gone through a lot, but this is just the start of our deep dive. There's so much more to unravel. And who knows, maybe looking at it all together, we can shed some light on this mystery that's been hanging around for decades.
Those letters, they really get you thinking, don't they? Like, is there someone out there who knows more than they're saying?
Right. And it bugs me that we don't know if the cops back then, if they even looked into those letters seriously, tried to find who wrote them.
Tough to say, really. But it does show how much things have changed, how investigations work now. Imagine what they could do today with those hairs on the pencil. DNA testing and all that.
Yeah, think about it. Those bloodstains and stuff they found on the pillows in Buddy's room, too. Modern forensics could probably tell us a lot more.
Oh, absolutely. Technology's a game changer for cold cases. But even without all that fancy stuff, there's still pieces of this we gotta look at closer. Like, what about Buddy? He's the only one, really, who saw what happened before Malvina died.
Yeah, it's just awful. A 10-year-old kid in the middle of all that. And remember, he talked to his mom through the bathroom door. Maybe while the killer was right there in the house.
It's possible. Even those little moments, they could have clues hidden in them. Buddy said his room was messy, like maybe there was a fight.
And he swore up and down that his mom, she was in that bathroom the whole time he was home. Makes you think maybe he said something. Without even realizing it, they could point to who did it.
Kids, they notice things we don't sometimes. The way they see things, it could be important, if we look at it the right way.
And you can't help but think about what all this did to Buddy. Having to live with those memories all these years, with no answers.
Trauma, it does things to people. Who knows how much this whole thing messed him up, Especially with the case never being solved.
Plus all the other bad stuff that happened to this family.
Yeah.
The fire, the divorce, then Charles's mom dying in a car crash, him getting hurt bad too. It's just too much.
Yeah, it's almost like too many tragedies for one family, right? And while we can't say for sure if it's all connected to Malvina's death, it definitely makes the whole thing even more messed up.
Okay, so we've got the suspects, the mystery letters, what this all might have done to Buddy. But let's zoom out for a sec. This is 1958 Indianapolis. Things were changing big time back then in America. Society, culture, everything.
Good point. Civil rights movement was getting going. Women's roles were changing. Lots of uncertainty in the air. All of that It could have affected how they did the investigation.
Yeah, like with that hitchhiker. They jumped to conclusions because he was black. Were there other things, social stuff, prejudices that messed things up?
Definitely possible. Look at those polygraphs they were so into. Back then it was like magic, but now we know they weren't perfect, not even close.
Right. And relying on just those results, without looking at other stuff, thinking about bias, it could have sent the whole investigation off track.
For sure. It's like, even when something seems groundbreaking, you gotta be critical, use other methods too.
Okay, so we looked at the evidence, thought about what was going on in society back then, and how technology, even when it's supposed to be amazing, can have its problems. Think we found anything those original detectives missed?
I'd say there's a few things worth looking at again. Those wet pants in Buddy's room, that's still a head-scratcher.
It's like this silent clue, right? Trying to tell us something, but we got to figure out what.
Yeah, exactly. Was there a fight somewhere else? Did someone try to make it look like something it wasn't? Lots of questions there.
And what about that absolute evidence against Robert Smith? If they were so sure, why not tell anyone what it was?
Frustrating, right? Could be something important there. And those letters, we can't forget about them. Even if we don't know who wrote them, they could have leads the cops didn't follow up on.
It feels like every time we learn something new, it just leads to more questions.
That's cold cases for you. The more time passes, the trickier it gets.
Yeah?
But it also gets more interesting in a way.
Okay, so we've gone over a lot, but there's one more twist of this story. Ready for this? So, almost 20 years after Malvina's murder, 1977, there's another unsolved murder in Indianapolis. And it's got some really eerie similarities to Malvina's case.
This is where things get even creepier. The victim, Linda McDaniel, 23 years old, a first-grade teacher, and guess what? They found her dead in her bathtub, just like Malvina.
Hold on. 2 women, both found dead in their bathtubs years apart. That can't be just a coincidence, can it?
It's definitely unsettling, and the parallels don't stop there. Like Malvina, Linda was partially submerged in the water. Bruises, but no signs of forced entry, no struggle.
And in both cases, nothing was stolen. So it wasn't about robbery, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Makes you think it was personal. Maybe revenge. Or someone wanting to control them.
But there's some differences too, aren't there?
Yeah. For one, Linda was found in just her underwear. Remember, Malvina's pants were missing and turned up in her son's room?
That's a big difference. Could it be 2 different killers who just happened to do things the same way?
It's possible. I mean, they were both partially dressed, but those little details, they could mean the killer had different reasons, different ways of doing things.
And as far as we know, there's nothing directly connecting the 2 cases. No same suspects, no witnesses who saw both victims, no DNA or anything like that.
True. But not having a clear link doesn't mean there isn't one. Serial killers, they can change their methods over time. That 20-year gap, maybe that explains why things are a little different.
So you're saying it's possible that whoever killed Malvina, maybe they killed Linda too, all those years later.
We gotta consider it, right. Look at all the possibilities. But we can't jump to conclusions either. Those similarities, they could just be a coincidence.
Like trying to fit puzzle pieces together, but we're missing the one that connects them for sure.
Exactly. Without more evidence, it's all just guesswork. But it shows how important it is to investigate thoroughly, even years later. You never know what might turn up.
Okay, so let's recap. We started with a woman found dead in her bathtub. Seemed pretty open and shut, but the more we looked into it, the more complicated it got. Relationships, alibis, those letters, and now maybe even a link to another unsolved murder.
Malvina Crutz's case, it's like a reminder that even the most ordinary life can have this darkness hidden in it. We never really know the whole story.
And even after 66 years, the search for answers, for justice, it doesn't stop. There's always a chance new evidence will pop up or someone remembers something, some little clue that could break the case wide open.
That's why we gotta keep telling these stories, keep asking questions, keep digging.
We may never know for sure who killed Malvina Crutz or if it's connected to Linda McDaniel's death. But by looking at it all again with fresh eyes, we can at least keep hoping for justice.
And hey, maybe someone listening right now, they know something, a memory, a clue, anything. Even the smallest thing could make a difference. If you know anything about Malvina's case, please tell the authorities. You could be the one to finally solve this thing.
It's a good reminder that we can all be part of finding justice. Even the tiniest detail can matter.
So until next time, stay curious and never give up on the truth.